Hi Dominic, really appreciate your time to come online with us and explaining the cool project that you are working on. And I think it's a really cool project for those who already use WinCC Unified for their HMI or SCADA project. So I thought it's beneficial for everyone. You know, you walk them through how it works, what was your incentive to create this project, and so on. So thanks again, and the stage is yours.
Yeah, so the Unified Project Selector has been one of my side project, I would say, over the last few months. I believe I started that like in September. As part of application engineering team of Siemens Canada, we deal with a lot of project and a lot of customers. So we're kind of getting stuck or or stuck with some feature in the Semantic Runtime Manager by WinCC that we didn't like about it. So we just decided to make our own tool interacting with the Semantic Runtime Manager, but with much more features.
All right, great. So I think I forgot to ask you to introduce yourself, but you already did. So Dominic, working for Siemens as an application engineer, covering the Quebec and the east side. So thanks again for the introduction. So if I understood well, and of course I tried your project and I really liked it, that's why we are here. So for those who are familiar with WinCC Unified, there is this piece of software in the WinCC Unified platform, it's called Runtime Manager. But the functionality is kind of limited, and Dominic identified that, and he's one of those makers and builders. He didn't wait for anyone else, so he just jumped in and made his own improvement to that. So overall, that's what he is going to explain in the next few minutes. And I think, Dominic, if you don't mind, to show the project is also open source, right? So you can maybe show the GitHub that the user can download the project and so on. And again, back to yourself.
I'm going to share you my screen and I can show you the starting point of all of this, also all the functionality of the tool itself. So the first starting point of this whole idea of getting more functionality available to us that deals with a lot of, again, we deal with quite a lot of projects. I mean, for developing applications, demo workshops, to helping customers in their project on our engineering station. And sometimes we deal with like hundreds of projects inside our Semantic Runtime Manager. So the starting point of this all was really just that I have made a very simple script at that time called the Runtime Manager Cleaner. So this is not the tool we are really speaking about today, but it's the origin and where it came from. So I made that little script for people that uses WinCC Unified to be able to delete every entries in their Semantic Runtime Manager with a single click. So you just run the script and it deletes everything inside your Semantic Runtime Manager. Then what happened with, with this script is that many people within Siemens, of course, because at first I published this just internally. It was not really public. So many internal colleagues came to myself when I published that internally because they thought it was very helpful for them. Because if some of the audience here in the video has some synchronization issue with projects in their Semantic Runtime Manager, for example, then the only way around is just to find that ID of the project and delete it. And sometimes, again, when you deal with hundreds of projects in your Runtime Manager, it gets frustrating. Basically, interacts with the Runtime Manager. The Runtime Manager has an API. It is documented publicly in the manual of WinCC Unified. So I'm just interacting with that API and then sending batch commands to the Runtime Manager.
Yeah, so I just wanted to add something to make sure I understood well. So it has the WinCC Unified has an API that, you know, everyone else can also go and read the documentation and implement their own idea. So it's an open platform. And I also noticed your project is purely a batch file, right? Or you have used other programming language, which is great. That shows, you know, it's just simple batch command, you can just create such a great application.
You are totally right. The Runtime Manager Cleaner is essentially a single batch file. Simple as that. You know, you need to know some commands. The batch file executes some commands, but also creates some PowerShell scripts and runs it. But essentially, yeah, it's just a batch command because at the end of the day, if you go to your command prompt in your WinCC Unified installation, in the bin directory, you're going to find Semantic Runtime Manager.exe, the executable of it, and you can interact with it with the CMD command. So yeah, and all the documentation is freely available.
Thank you so much. I think that clears up some question already. So if you don't mind, let's just jump into the project, and you could show the repository, and maybe if you could show us some example, maybe how to use it, that would be great.
I share my screen again. This is an open public GitHub repo called TI Portal Application. This is an official verified Siemens repository, and there's a lot of project inside of it. So my project specifically that I've released a couple of weeks ago is the Unified Project Selector and Watcher service. So it's two different tool in behind, but they work kind of together a little bit. They can run independently, but they are bundled a bit together as well. So starting off with a little bit of documentation and also starting off with Unified Project Selector, we're going to finish with Watcher Service. Essentially, Watcher Service is just a little service or add-on that runs in behind. So the most of the work is with the Unified Project Selector. So it's really a Windows program that you install on your machine. There's also a portable version if you like that way as well. Essentially, it mirrors a little bit your Semantic Runtime Manager, but it allows you to do batch command execution. So you build a queue of commands to Semantic Runtime Manager, and you can execute it. For example, my runtime cleaner script, you can do the exact same thing with this tool. So you could select everything and say remove and then execute the batch, then they are just going to get deleted sequentially. So let's take a look at the functionalities. So of course, you can stop a project, which is quite basic. You can remove it as well. But one of the most interesting features, at least that I think it is, the ability of creating an offline package. As many of you already may know, the ability to upload a project is impossible, or it's not really doable on any WinCC platform that I really work with. Example, you cannot upload a unified config panel program out of the HMI. But this, with PC runtime, at least you cannot really recover the engineering side of things, but at least you can do an online backup of your project. I will demonstrate you this in a moment. You can do full download, of course, of an online package, so an offline package that you have created or an offline package that you have made with TIA Portal, and as well as deleting the offline packages themselves. Another interesting part is about the offline packages. So functionalities of this function is what is supported or not in those offline packages. So at the moment, everything related to database is not supported. It will be in the future. I just don't have much time to develop it. So tag persistency is a database, so it's not yet there. Tag logging, alarm logging, PACO also is a database. So all of those database things are not yet backed up, but I will try to make them in the next release because I found a way to do it, but it's just not done yet. Faceplate is supported, custom web control, all the scheduled tasks follows. If you have the UMC data JSON file or not. So it follows your project in your SCADA project folder, and there's this file, and basically the Semantic Runtime Manager, when it loads a offline package, will read this UMC data and will build the user management out of it. So there's no like plain text password in that. Everything is encrypted in that way. It is very secure. But this file only appears if you have downloaded your application with the checkbox of the keep user data administration in runtime unchecked. So if you have kept this checkbox ticked, then you won't have this file. So you you need to watch out for it. I cannot recreate UMC data out of nothing. If you want UMC data to follow in your offline package, then you need this file to be there. So let's jump to the software itself. Let's start off with the Runtime Manager itself. So it's you need to know that tool if you one day going to work with WinCC Unified, of course. Either it's simulation, if it's a real project, if it's simulating an HMI, everything that relates to unified visualization on your system, on your engineering system, will go by this tool. It essentially manages what goes inside your IIS, your web server of Windows. So yeah, so one thing that I want to show is the inability to to check all of these bugs at once and deleted it. So that was the exact starting point that I was speaking about earlier. Yeah, so as you can see, I have a couple of projects, not too much yet. You can do many things with it. You can load an offline package, so a offline project that you would have created with TI Portal from here. You can delete a single entry project. You can start, you can stop. There's various settings. There's a recovery segments of databases. Many good things you can do with that tool. It's very useful. You need to know that tool again if you're going to work with WinCC. But you cannot create an offline package out of that. And furthermore, if you go to your SCADA project location where all of your project resides, you cannot just copy this folder to a new PC and have this project in your system. That does not work like that, because all the dependencies, you cannot just grab this and go away with it. So that was the challenge of creating an offline package. So now, Unified Project Selector. The icons look like that. So you have UPS and UPS Watcher Service. So UPS, once you start it. So as you can see, it's the exact same list that we have here and here. So for example, I have some project. Let me just do like this, and I have like new topology, and I don't know, 2023 eCar must be somewhere in this. It's there. So it's the exact same list. So with Project Selector, as I said, you can do all the basic functions that you want. So if I would like to start a project, yeah, I can take that one, for example. I would like to start. I select the projects, select a command that I want, and I just transfer the command. And then I can build a queue if I need to build a queue. In that example, I will just send a single command and it will start my project for me. You don't need to use UPS for basic stuff, right? You need that for, as I said, if you would like to delete everything, you could just remove everything from there with like 3 clicks. But the most interesting functionality I think that we have in this tool is the ability to do an offline package, even if the project runs, by the way. So for example, I have this test 18.3, which is a running project currently, and I can check the box of this project in the UPS and create an offline package. So it tells you that it created a file. Then you can navigate to the offline package where you have this entry now, which is essentially a file in your system. Offline package, by the way, is just a zip file of all the configuration that needs to be loaded to the Runtime Manager. So again, not just file moved out the way. Allow me just to show you that it works in a way. So if I have a very basic project here running, so I will delete it from my system. And because I've created an offline package with UPS, then I will be able to recover from it with all the same users, all the same object in my screen. So come back here. So I have selected my offline package, add the queue, execute the queue. And if I come here and I just refresh my entries, I see now latest entries is 18.3, which is my project that I just deleted from my system. So cool backup. And I just started it again. Let's just see if everything worked on the visualization side. I hope I have the right user and password. There it goes. So everything is back on. Essentially, this is, again, a zip file. On the project selector, you can double click on the name on the header of the software. It will bring you to the directory where all the files that we use in the software resides. For example, the offline packages are in the offline folder. So this is a portable file that you could put to a USB stick, bring to another machine, and load it to another machine. So very fast, very efficient way of transferring live project. By the way, I said it will not keep the databases, but it will recreate them. So it won't back up your database, but of course, everything that requires a database will be recreated. and will work. So if you were archiving a value, the tool will not back up for you the archived value acquired up to that time, but it will start recreating those archive. So if you know how to back up your database and just put it to the new system, then you're good to go. Everything's backed up. You also have the online. Nothing's really interesting there. Output.csv is really just the file that I read to build this table here. So nothing much here. Settings, pretty interesting one. So watcher.cfg, you can access this file with tools and settings. It's basically just the version that you want your project to be or to be seen by the Semantic Runtime Manager when you download your offline package to it. So it creates a download task, and in the download task, you need to assign a version. So you can change that version. So currently I was at 19. So if you would have like 18 update 2, then it would be 18.0.0.2 as an example. I will show you the UPS config later. Temporary, just don't play in that folder. It really just creates and erases some files in that directory when we do some offline packages or that we load or we send queue commands. It's just a temporary file that I usually erase on loading of the software. And then the watcher. The watcher, I will explain it with the watcher service.
All right, Dominic, thank you so much for explaining the UPS part. I think for those who already use Unified, they appreciate what you've done. And from my side, thank you so much for your time. And I think we are ready to jump into the watcher service as well, right? So that's also a very useful feature. I think it will be useful for any customer who already use WinCC Unified. So if you don't mind, let's just jump into the watcher service and show what does it do exactly and how a different user can use that.
Of course, watcher service also, I think, is a very cool feature of the whole tool. It's a tool without a graphical user interface. It allows us to monitor a specific folder on your system, and when it sees an offline package, essentially, so a .zip containing a download task, it will attempt to load this folder directly and automatically to your Semantic Runtime Manager. And it can also auto start your offline package after it loads it to the manager. So let me jump back in a little bit and show you how it works. So watcher service, what are you able to do with this is monitor a folder, as I said. So you can enable or disable the tool. So it can be always running on your system, but you can choose to not enable the monitoring of the specified folder. But when you have it enabled, you can as well select if it will auto start or attempt to auto start the project or not. Essentially, this was a tool for us that gives a lot of workshops on Unified to sometimes large audiences. So when you think of having some audience like nearly 40 people, and you need to run project on machines, when they go out for a 10-minute breaks, you need to load a new project to their system. Then we can just share a folder on the network, for example, and then we put the offline package in that specific folder, and it will load everywhere on each and every station that has the Unified Watcher service listening into. So pretty cool tool. So first of all, it's an icon in your system tray. You have to right click on it to interact with it. You can open Unified Project Selector. It will just open the user interface of UPS. You can enable it. You can auto start it, as I said, and you can specify also a watcher directory. So you can specify which folder you want the service to listen into. By default, it is that watcher directory that I've spoken about earlier. So by default, it's that folder that if you put an offline package into, the tool will attempt to load to your Semantic Runtime Manager by itself. Then we also have watcher config. So this watcher config is just the state of your checkbox here. So the state here of enable and auto start, and also what is the target of the watcher directory. So I still have this offline package of the project that we have tested earlier. So this project here. So I'm just gonna close this and I'm gonna delete that once again. So it will not be on my computer anymore. And what I will do is essentially I'm just gonna place this offline package, the zip file, into that watcher directory, and everything should load and start automatically according to what we've just read. So allow me to copy and watcher. And it happens quite fast, especially on very small offline packages. So I will just tell you that in advance. Look on the bottom right of the screen, then you will see the status of what's happening with the watcher service. So as you can see, new file detected, new project detected. AutoStart is enabled and starting project. So everything happened very fast. As I said, small projects goes crazy fast, but I can just come back in my real Semantic Runtime Manager, and voila, here is my 18.3 project running, downloaded, and I can just go back here, and yeah, I have my project back on again. So yeah, very cool tool for trainers, for people that gives workshops, or essentially if you have some VMs of computers on the network, then you can just share a folder and push some offline package on it. Note that by default, it will delete the offline package out of your watcher service. This was a requirement from one of my colleagues. But if you don't like that, you can just, rebuild the code. But maybe I will make a setting out of that in the future releases. But for now, it deletes it. But yeah, you have the code, so you can just run it and run the code and essentially build the application again to meet your needs, essentially, right? It's what a open source project is for.
Thank you so much. I think for those who you work with Unified, they know how useful these tools are. Since Unified user have these two tools at their hands and they can basically take advantage of it. And the beauty of it is open source, right? So they can maybe customize it, they can add the features that they want, and they get idea from your project. So thank you so much for explaining both UPS and the watcher service. So I had a follow-up question also. Maybe you could kind of shed some light about, for those, I know you have a software background, but for us as an automation engineer, we don't really come with a background in a software engineering or software programming, purely programming. We are mostly electrical engineer, control engineer. So if you could kind of explain, how did you basically develop, what tools did you use to develop the user interface particularly, and overall, what's the process and the procedure that you suggest if someone wants to develop their own kind of tiny application for a particular basically task in automation and OT work?
So yeah, there was also some sub questions in your question. Let's maybe start with what I have used for this tool. It's essentially a Visual Studio project. It's a C# based project using WPF, so Windows Form essentially, and some free open source libraries for the visual and stuff like that. So as an example, the little pop-ups notifications for the watcher service is a free library that you can find out there, and it's just a method that you call. But basically, yeah, I think for me especially, I'm not really able just to create a software to create a software. I need a task or a purpose for it. Other than that, I'm not that super creative person that just create something out of nowhere. I need a goal. So I would suggest people to first think of something that they need or something that they don't like about the software, and then secondly, go into the documentation. So when I initially started all of those scripts and all that software, I reached out to some colleagues out there just to ask them their thoughts about this. So would it be possible to do something like that? And they just said, yeah, I mean, there's a CLI. So you can use a CLI commands to interact with Semantic Runtime Manager. And you should find all the documentation in the manual. And so, yeah, my second tips would be just to go out there in the documentation. I might be a little bit biased, but I think Siemens documentation is pretty open overall. As you mentioned in the intro, we have APIs documentation for a lot of our things. We have, for example, OpenS for TIA portal. We have OpenPipe for all of the WinCC stuff. We have this Runtime Manager API as well for Semantic Runtime Manager. So we have a lot of openings, and all the documentation is out there. And you just basically have to find a way of interacting with it. So my program, for example, the visual, so what the people see and the button that they clicks is C#. But in behind, as soon as you start interacting with Semantic Runtime Manager, it creates a temporary bat file on your temp folder, and it executes it. So as simple as that. So yeah, that would be maybe my 2-3 tips. So find a goal, and look towards the documentation. Reach out to your network or colleagues about the idea if it's doable. Maybe sometime you will find some very useful hints. So yeah, that would be my 3 tips.
Okay, yeah, thank you so much. I think that's a great point, because from what I also have seen, like in the software world, basically documentation is the king or the queen, whatever you want to call it. So you just need to give the documentation to a software developer, and they just figure it out how to use the API, how to use a plugin, and so those sort of things. But I think, at least what I have seen in the last, several years that I work as an automation engineer, we don't have that mindset yet in the automation engineering world, but we are getting there, because everything, OT and IT is merging, and we have the OT-IT convergence idea.
Yeah.
So it's very essential to understand the documentation, reach out. Maybe we should kind of stay away from that mindset that, okay, do some coding and lock it up and keep the key under your pillow. So don't be like that, just share, connect with the community, share what you know. Not everyone knows everything, and some people have more experience, right? Thank you so much again. I think we can just wrap up this session. And again, really appreciate your time. I know we both have full-time job during the week, and we are right now recording this, for those who don't know, outside of the working hours. I think it's around 8 p.m. or for you it's very late in Quebec City. So thank you so much again, and until the next time, have a great night.